Matrix, and welcome to Matrix. My name is Luni and I'll be assisting you to get all of your questions through to us. Today we're doing your final exam prep for MathSlit. All you need to do to send us your questions is visit our social media platforms, search for Matrix, as well as our WhatsApp line, and all the details are on the screen. Don't forget guys, we've got a cool competition going on, so please do stay tuned to get all of those details later on in the show. I'm not alone. I've got my favorite sign language interpreter with us. It's Nicolene, as well as our awesome teacher, Haley. Thank you so much, guys, and over to you.
Thanks, Luni. Welcome, Matrix. I'm happy to be here with you today to go through some exam prep for paper 2. So, in our last session, I actually promised you that I would do some tax question. So I'm going to get to that now. So, our question, and I actually read it to you last time that we were together, was John is 68 years old and he receives a taxable income of 2,045,364 Rand for the 2018-2019 tax year. He paid a monthly contribution towards a medical scheme for himself and his wife. I'm going to read the questions. It said, calculate John's total medical scheme tax rebate for the year. We want to know his tax rebate, and hence calculate the amount of income tax that he had to pay for that tax year. Guys, what's really important is to remember to read the whole question. So sometimes second part of the question helps you with the first part. So read the entire question, it's a good habit to get into, and then go on and answer each question individually. So let's start with our tax rebate. So before we do that, I have gone through this tax table with you, but we've got the year. Remember that this is annual. Remember that this is all for annual amounts. And we've got our tax incomes, the different brackets, the tax rate, our tax rebate that we get, and finally our medical scheme tax rebate for the month. So let's go through our questions. Calculate John's total medical scheme tax rebate for the year. So we're going to go to our table and we're going to see that it was for himself. So for the taxpayer who paid medical scheme contributions, it's 310 Rand. Then for his first dependent, now that's his wife, he's also getting 310 Rand. If he had any additional dependents, and his other dependents would be maybe children, then he would get 209 Rand per child or per dependent. So our amount that we have here is 310 basically times 2, or we can add them. Okay, so now let's go to our calculator and do this on the calculator. So I've got 310 Rand and I'm timesing that by 2 or adding 310 and I get 620 Rand. So that's 620. That's per month. Now remember they asked you what the question asked you is, go back to the question. The question said calculated for the year. So now we're going to go back and we're going to do this calculation for the year. Let's get our calculator out again. So that was per month. We've got 12 months in the year. So times by 12 gives me 7,440. So it was 7,440 Rand. That's his rebate that he gets for the medical aid. Now let's move on. It says, hence, calculate the amount of income tax he had to pay for the 2008-2009 tax year. So first we're going to take his number, his salary. So that was your 2,045,364. We're going to minus the rebate, which was our 7,440. Okay. And we're going to get our taxable income. So when you're typing in this number, please make sure that you check that you've got the correct digits as you're typing in the number, and that the number that you've typed on your calculator, it's always a good idea to check very carefully that the number on your calculator and the number that you've written down are the same. that you haven't made a mistake in a simple typing in a number, and then you're going to get the wrong answer. The teacher who's marking, your examiner, is not going to know that you've just made a silly, careless mistake. So double check. And now for that, we're going to minus our 7440, and we're going to get an answer of 2,037,924. Okay, so we're going to put that number into here. In fact, I'm going to go to the next page, and I'm going to write in this number. So it was 2 million, I think it was 037, oops, $037,924. I think that was the number. Let's double check it. 924. So that's what his taxable income is. Now we're going to go to our tax table, and we're going to see where does he fit into the tax table. So on this table, I'm actually going to add brackets. So I'm just going to put it into each one of the brackets, just so that it helps me identify where it fits. So I'm checking that it's annual, and I know that that 2 million was annual, and then I'm looking for the number in my taxable income. So immediately I can see that it is above 1.5 million. So he's going to go into tax bracket 7. Okay, so on my notes, I'm going to actually say here that it's tax bracket 7. And the reason I'm doing that is it actually makes it very logical, and the examiner can follow my work very clearly. So I know it's tax table 7. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out this part of the tax table. So it's 532041. So it's 532,041 plus, we'll go back and see what it says, 45% of the income above 1.5. So 45% of the amount above 1.5 million. So once I've written that in, now it's easy for me to actually do the calculations. So first thing I need to do is I'm going to change my colors and point out I need to work out how much he earned above 1.5 million. So if you're using a scientific calculator, we can do this in one step. Okay, so I've just written out the first part. I'm going to times it by, and then I'm opening my bracket. 45% of means times. The amount above, so I'm taking my income, or his salary that he's earning, and I'm minusing the 1.5 million. Right, and now I can type that exactly onto my calculator, and I will get the answer. So let's do this first. Okay, and I will show you, but then I'm going to show you how to do it step by step so that we actually can do it on a 4-function calculator. So I'm typing this exactly as it is, checking as I go. So I'm adding 45%. Okay, try that again, 45% of, and then I'm opening a bracket, so I have a bracket on this calculator, 2,037,924 minus 1.5 million. So when I do my 1.5 million, I've got to be careful that I get the correct number of zeros. So it should be another 3. So let me just check that again. So I've got 1,500, I do need another 0. Okay, close the brackets, and I get an answer of 774,106.8. Let's write that in. 774, what it was, 106.8. Remember, it's money, must be 2 decimal places, and I need a rand in front of it. There's still more calculations for us to do. But before I go on to carry on the sum, I want to show you what happens if you're not using a scientific calculator. So if you're not using a scientific calculator, you're going to work out, and I'm going to do it in a different color, you're going to work out that portion first. So I'm going to do that, right? So I'm going to clear this totally. So I'm going by 2,037,924, and I'm going to minus my 1.5 million. And I'm going to get 537,924. So I'm going to add this number. So that's the amount above. Then I'm going to work out my percentage of that. So on my calculator, I'm going to take, and in fact, let's write it first. I'm going to take my 537,924, and I'm going to times that by 45%. And I'm going to get an answer. Let's get a calculator. So I'm going to type in this number, 537,924, times that by 45%, and I get an answer of 242,065.8. $242,065.80. Now to that I need to add my initial amount that I had there, which was your 532,041. So on my calculator, I'm going to do that. So now to that, I'm going to add 532,041. Check that I've got the right answer. And now I get the same answer that I got when I used the one step. Now, let's move on to the next part of the question, is we haven't finished the question. We now have that he's earning that amount of money, sorry, he's paying that amount of money, but there's a rebate. So, when we have a rebate, we need to look at his age. And if you remember correctly, he was 68 years old. So, he needs to get a rebate of the primary and the secondary because he's above 65. So, we're going to take both of those numbers and we're going to add them to our calculation. So, I'm going to take my answer here that I got. Let's just get that answer again. It was 774,106. So now I'm going to say it was 0 less my rebate. And the rebate, if we go back to the table, was 14,067. So we're going to minus 14,067 and minus the other amount for the primary, which was 7713. So both of those I'm going to add, well, I'm going to minus them. So I've got that number there. I'm going to minus the rebate of your 14,067 minus 7713, and finally get to see that his tax is 752,326. So that answer was 752, I think 236, comma 80. I'll double check that I got that right. 326, get that wrong. That was 326. See how important it is to check and put a rand in front of it. That's the amount of money. Now I want to go back and quickly check the question. The question actually said, hence calculate the amount of income tax he has to pay for the whole tax year. So the reason I went back to check that is I want to know if they wanted to know how much tax he pays per month, or have they asked me per year. So it's important to double check the question and make sure that you're actually answering exactly what they've asked for. So they want it per year, so I can leave it like that. If they wanted it per month, then I would just take my answer and divide it by 12. So tax is not that difficult. Table, taxable income, do your table, do your calculation, and don't forget to minus the rebate. And then you're going to get the final tax that's paid. I think on that note, maybe it's time that we take a little bit of a break and get a little bit of a stretch, and I'll see you in a few moments.
Thank you, Hayley. Guys, let's take a quick break and we'll see you shortly after this. Welcome back from the break, Matrix. I hope you're still enjoying the show. We are assisting you for the upcoming exams with the final exam prep. If you're someone who's constantly running out of data, then this next competition is just for you. Woza Matrix is bringing you the hashtag WozoWinner competition, where 2 lucky matriculants stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. All you need to do to enter is head on over to our Facebook page and all of the details will be there. Thank you so much, Hayley, and over to you.
Thanks, Looney. Welcome back, Matrix. And let's see what our next question is. So we got question 2 from an Eastern Cape paper. We've got Mrs. Lingham did not have enough money to start a business and opted for a loan of 280,000 Rand from a financial institution. She was offered 2 options to be paid off over a period of 35 months. When I see 35, immediately bells are going off in my head, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. Our first option is a simple interest option at 9.75% per annum, and our second is compound at 8.25% per annum compounded annually. I'm going to read the questions, and I'm going to come back to why the 36 was worrying me. It says calculate the interest that you will pay on the simple interest option. Right, so going back to our calculation, there's 35 months. I know that 35 months is not a full 3 years, because I know that 3 years is actually 36 months. Now I've only got 35 months, which means that I actually only have 2 years and the balance of 11 months. And that's important. Then I'll use those calculations when I actually do the calculations, be it simple or compound interest. So let's go back to the question. So the question said, calculate the interest that you will pay on a simple interest option. And they give us the formula. The formula that they give us is the interest is equal to the amount borrowed times the interest rate times the number of years. Not the number of months, the number of years. So let's see if I've got some space. So we have our interest amount borrowed. So our amount borrowed was 280,000 Rand. My interest rate was 9.75%. And what I'm going to do in this case, I'm actually going to say 9.75 on my calculator. I'm going to divide it by 100 to get it as a decimal. So it's 0.0975. So it's just a different way of doing the calculation. Okay, you could have put your percentage sign in. You can put your percentage sign if you want to leave it as 9.75 and put the percentage sign in, or you can actually put 9.75 divided by 100. But it's important that we remember it is a percentage. And remember, if you do use this calculation, you cannot round these numbers off. They need to be exactly what it was in the question. Now they want to know the number of years. So, and I've got 35 months. So to convert that into years, I'm going to say 35 over 12. In fact, I'm going to do that on the calculator first. So I'm going to take my 35 divided by 12, and you'll see that I get 2.91, lots of sixes, 7. Now, Remember I said to you, don't round off. Now, because I've got this number on my calculator, I'm going to use it straight away, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to times that by 280,000. Make sure that I've got the correct number, and I'm going to times it by my interest rate, which was my 0,0975. And now I get my answer of 79,625. Okay, it's important to remember that it's money. It needs to have my rand in front of it, my R, and because it's a whole number, I don't actually need the decimals. But if you really want to, you can put comma 00, that's fine. Have I answered the question? The question asked me for the interest, so I have. The second part of the question says, advise Mrs. Lingham to which option to opt for if she wants to pay less interest. Show all your calculations. Now, we've already done the calculations for option 1, so I'm actually just going to write it in here. Option 1, my interest that we earned was on my calculator, so I can get it off the calculator, 79,625. And now I need to compare that with option 2. So let's go through to a new page. The formula now, so option 2, we're now going to calculate this interest rate, add this interest, and the interest rate is 8.25% per annum compounded annually. So remember we had our 280,000 Rand, and we're going to do it at 8.25%. Now guys, I don't want you to use those complicated compound interest formulas. It's very easy to get them confused, and it's easy to forget them. What I'd rather you do is I'd rather that you did step by step for compound interest and you don't use the formula. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So what we have is we're going to do this year by year. So for year 1, we have our 280,000 Rand, and we times that by 108.25%. That's going to give me the total in one step. So on my calculator, I'm going to take my 280,000 and I'm going to times it by 108.25%. And get an answer. I've got 303,100. So that is 303,100. I want to just point out that I haven't actually filled in the R sign for the rands. It's fine to leave out units during your calculations, but you must ensure that at the end you've always got your unit. So that was year 1. Now we're going to do year 2. So now I'm taking my amount that I had in year 1 and I'm increasing that by 8.25%. Now I'm going to show you a different, slightly different calculation with this one. So if I take my value, I'm going to just times by 8.25%. Let's try that again. And for that I get, that's the interest. But now to that I need to add my original 303,100. So when I do the step like I did for year 1, it gives it to me actually in one step. So that's 328,105. 328,105.75. That's the amount for year 2. Now we have a slight issue with year 3. So let me change colors with this. So in year 3, I don't have a full year, but I've only got 11 months. So what I need to do is I need to actually convert my annual interest rate into a monthly and then work out how many months. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this first. I'm going to take my 8.25%. I'm going to divide it by 12 to get a monthly rate, and I'm going to times it by 11 to get my rate for just that portion of the year. So on my calculator, I'm going to clear that, I've got 8.25. Now I'm not typing in the percent, because my percent in this case is actually not a process that you need to do, it's rather a unit. So my 8.25, I'm going to divide that by 12, and I'm going to times it by 11. And I'm going to get an answer of 7,5625. So 7,5625. So now in year 3, I need to take that full answer that I had, the amount that we had on the page before, and I'm going to get that from my calculator. Now my calculator has got this measurement in here. So that was my last answer. It was 328,105. Okay. $105. Let's remember the decimals. 75. And I'm increasing that by 107,5625%. On my calculator, taking that answer that I had, times by 107,5625%. Okay, try that again. Calculator's not cooperating with me right now. Okay, and we've got a mistake somewhere because the number should be much bigger. So let's try that again. This is what's important about actually checking your answers. So I've got 328,105.75 times that by 107,5625%. And get an answer of 352,918. Okay, and the cents was 75 cents. That's the total that she pays, including the interest. Now we only want the interest value, so to that we're going to actually minus what we started with, that 208,000, and we get 72,918, and now we compare that to what we had for option 1. So I'm going to write this in. Interest was 72,918, and I'm just going to compare. So I'm going back in my slides to see what option 1 was, and option 1 was 79. And now the question was, which was less interest? So option 2 is less. Option 2. Right, let's see what our next part of our question is. After a second factory was set up and running, she compared the production of the 2 factories in 1 year. She used a box and whisker diagram. So when we look at our information, I've said to you before, anytime you have a diagram, you need to analyze the diagram first. So this is our box and whisker diagram, and the production is in thousands. That is an important point to see in our diagram, because each one of these is actually 1,000. So it's 10,000, 50,000, etc. And when we have our box and whisker, remember, it separates your data into your 5-number summary. So it's got your min, it's got your max, it's got your Q2, Q1, and Q3. Now that we've done a little bit of analysis of the diagram, I think maybe it's time for us to take a little bit of a break. So I'm going to hand you over to Looney.
Thank you, Hayley. Guys, we are going to take a quick break, but before we do, don't forget to send us your questions and your comments on our social media platforms, as well as enter the competition to stand a chance to win yourself data. We'll see you straight after this. We're back from the break, Matrix, and I hope you're still enjoying the show. Thank you so much, Hayley, and over to you.
Thank you. So now let's see what our questions that we had were. So the question said, explain which factory performed the worst. I need a pen for that. Performed the worst in terms of production if only the median and the interquartile range are compared. And then with reference to your answer question 3.1, do you think it was a good idea? So let's go through each question. So we're looking at the interquartile range. So our interquartile range, we need our Q1, our Q3, and our Q2, and we're going to read all these values. So within our factory, I think I've got space here, factory performed the worst. So in our interquartile range, I'm going to draw values down to my graph, so that I can see each one of these values. I'm going to do one at a time. Okay, so factory 1, I've got my Q2, or my median, is 60. Then I've also got Q3, my interquartile range is Q3 minus Q1. So I've got 75 minus 40, which is 35. So I'm going to just write that in. So we've got factory 1. We've got our median was 60,000. And our interquartile range was 35,000. Okay, then I go back to that. My factory 2, my interquartile range was 80 minus 35. So it's 80 minus 35. I'll do that on my calculator. And that's 45. That's not 35. I just have to check things. So my interquartile range was 45. The next page. Then for factory 2, the interquartile range was 45,000. And the median was 50,000. So the question was, which performed worse? So when you look at the median, factory 1 was higher, which was better. The interquartile range, factory 1 was smaller, which means it is closer together, everything's closer to the middle. So which performed worse? I would say that it was factory 2 that performed worse. Factory 2 was worse. Then we move on to the next part of the question, which says, do you actually think that it was a good idea for her to compare the production of the two factories? Now, part of the question in the very beginning, and this is important when you read the question to take these things into account, factory 2 was a brand new factory. So it's really important for her to collect the data and then compare them. She can see that factory 1's done better, but it's also more established. So factory 2, maybe she needs to put a different manager in there because she wants to get that production to the same as factory 1. So is it a good idea? Always a good idea to add data, to collect data. Right, let's move on to our next question. Our next question, also from the Eastern Cape. I feel like I need to change my pen. Mrs. Lingham instructed her workers to pack the coffee mugs in boxes. So we've got coffee mugs and they're going into boxes. Let's see what our dimensions are. The dimensions of the box, we've got a length of 310, that you're definitely not going to see. We've got a length of 310, a width of 220, and a height of 150, all in millimeters. I'm happy they're all the same unit. The coffee mug, we've got a radius of 39 and a height of 94. So let's go through the questions. Right. Show that the height of the coffee mug is 62.7% of the height of the box. Now what's important, and an important skill to remember when you're doing kind of calculation where it asks you to prove something, try not use that answer within the calculation. So I don't want to use my 62.7, but I want to get an answer of 62.7. So I'm going to go back to my dimensions, and I'm going to see that my dimensions were, the height is 150 millimeters, that's the box, and that's 94 millimeters. So I'm going to do 94 millimeters divided by 150 millimeters. I want a percentage, so I'm going to times by 100, and let's see what that gives me. So I got 94 divided by 150 times by 100, the percentage, and I get an answer of 62.7. So once I've proved it, it's always really nice when they give me a question like this, is that when I prove it, I actually know that those marks are in the bag. Okay, let's see what the next part of the question is. My dimensions again. She claims that we can put 66 mugs will fit into 10 boxes. And they want you to verify, showing all calculations, whether her statement is valid or not. So now we need to try and work out how many mugs can fit into one box. So I'm going to find my measurements, my dimensions, and I need to remember that this is a packaging problem, and I can't work out the volume of the box and then the volume of the mugs and divide the two. I need to actually work out my length by length, width by width. Let's see if we've got space. So I'm going to do a drawing, because it's always a good idea to do a drawing, and I'm going to put my length, and I've got my breadth, and I need to divide the length of my box by my breadth of my mug. And now remember, when we place our mugs, we're going to be placing them next to each other. This is the bottom of the box, and we're looking at the diameter. So I'm just going to go check and see what my lengths are. So my length of my box is 310 millimeters. My radius was 39. That's my radius. My diameter, of course, is that times 2. So that is 78 millimeters. Okay, let's make that a little bit neater. With 78 millimeters. So I'm going to be using that value, and I'm going to be using my 310. So let's go to the calculation. My length is 310 divided by 78. That's how many will fit into the length. So now let's get my calculator out, and I'm going to take my 310 and divide it by 78, and I'm going to get an answer of 3.97. Now, even though it's nearly 4, I can't fit the fourth one into the box. It's going to expand out the box. So I always have to round down in this case. So on my length, I've got 3. Then I'm going to do my breadth, okay? And remember, it's the same. It's going to be my radius, because my diameter, I've got my diameter across. So my breadth, let's just check what that was. The width was 220. So that was 220 divided by 78. And on my calculator, I'm going to do that. So it was 220 divided by 78. And I get an answer of 2,8. And again, I cannot round up, so it becomes 2. So now that's what I've got on the base. And now let's do the height. My height, and each one of those, let's just see what the heights were. So my height is 150 and 94. So we're going to do that on the calculator. 150 divided by 94. And I can see that, even though we're rounding, let's go to it on the calculator to show you the rounding. 150 divided by 94 is actually 1,59, so it's 1. So we're going to get 1. Now in total, what we have is, we have what's at the bottom. We're going to multiply each one, so I can fit 6 mugs into one box. Now the question said, can we fit in 66 mugs in 10 boxes? So in 10 boxes, I can fit a maximum of 60 mugs. There's 6 per box, so therefore this is not valid. And it's important that we actually answer whether it's valid or not. And now once we've done that, we've done the last question, I want to just remind you, well, I actually want to wish you luck for this paper. I want to remind you of a few things. First, read your questions carefully, make sure that you've answered the question, reread the question, and make sense of your answer. I want you to go to bed early and sleep well the night before your exam. Sleep is the most important thing for you. Don't try and cram during the morning of your exam. You've got to trust that you've done enough work, and hopefully by the night before you can actually put it aside and just go into the exam fresh. Read your questions carefully. Use your calculators. Show every single step. Don't just enter it on your calculator and put the answer in. If you type it on your calculator, I want you to actually show it in your answers. And finally, check your answers. Do they make sense? And guys, have fun with the paper. And on that note, I'm going to say good luck to you again, and I'm going to pass you over to Luni.
Thank you, Haley. Matrix, it's been a great show. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. We're wishing you everything of the best, and do use our resources to help you prepare. Congratulations to all of the competition winners who will be announced on our Facebook page after the show. And don't forget to check out our schedule on www.wazamatrix.co.za. And if you missed any of the lessons, they are available on our YouTube channel as well. From me, Luni, Nicolene, and Haley, thank you and goodbye.